Okay, Marlene, so here's what I've got so far. I've got my SharePoint Designer 2010 open to my website. This is where we're going to be working at Demo CRM. I'm going to be working in the cases list because I know I'll need a unique identifier for each case. So in that, there's a field called case number, NT case number. And so what I've done is I've gone into workflows, created a new workflow tied to that list, the cases list, and I called it UniqueID generator. And then I have it open here. Here's the steps I have for the UniqueID generator. So I've created a couple variables within my workflow. I said create a variable. I did that here, local variables, right? I added these. I set date. These are just, my own sample information here, so whatever it is you're going to concatenate eventually, you could set in variables here. I set date to be a date and time, and I set an SPID variable to equal a number. And so what I did was I told the workflow, set the variable date to current item created. So let's just pretend like I want my control number or my unique ID for my SharePoint list items to be like date dash and then a unique auto-incremented number. And for that number, I'm just going to use the ID column in the SharePoint list. So we've got set variable date to current item created, which is the date that the item was created. And in that, I'll show you. You don't really get a whole lot of options as to what kind of formatting the date is returned as here, but I just said set variable date to current item, and then I looked up my column created. Okay. Then I set the other variable SPID that I created to the ID of the current item that was just created. So current item ID field should be an option in every list in SharePoint. This is the hidden ID field that's in all SharePoint lists. Here we're able to use that and reference it to use as a unique ID that's auto-incremented. Then, after I've set all my variables, I go and I update the item in current item. So what I'm trying to do is make the workflow run on item creation for my list. So every time a new item is created, this workflow is going to run. It's going to update the item that was just created. It's going to update the case number field with whatever I specified. And so what I've done is I said update case number with this string. And you do it by looking up using the add or change lookup here. So I said go ahead and update with, and you have this drop down, right? And usually it's defaulted to current item. But what I'm going to use is the variables that I created above here. Okay? So I'm going to open up the workflow variables and parameters, and I'm going to look for the variables that I created. Date. And I'm going to return that as short date because I don't want the time and all that other crap in my ID here. So I got that, and then you literally just can enter text here. And so I've hit space, I put a dash in, I put another space, and then my next variable, which is that SPID, which is my SharePoint list item ID. And so here I'm going to say variable again, and I want it to populate with my ID. And your only options here are currency and string because we set that to a number in our variable. We're going to leave it as a string. Okay? So I've got two of them there, but so what we should end up with here is a date. So it'd be like 1/14/2014 dash, and then the hidden ID field for our particular SharePoint item. Okay. So I'm gonna hit OK. You'll publish that back to your list. Then we'll go and load our site here. So I've created an item here and ran the workflow. One more thing before I move on to that. Make sure when you're viewing your list settings here, let me go back. Sorry, not the list settings, the workflow settings. So make sure on your workflow information page here, you've got it set to start workflow automatically when an item is created. I need to make sure that that's there. Okay. So now that should be activated. Let's create another item just so you can see how this works. So what we should end up with here then, since this will be the second item ever created in this list, is the date -2 for this new item here, and we'll say request new documentation. Since this is supposed to be a case and support type tracking system, I'll go ahead and mark that as an administrator assigned issue. If you wanted to within your system, if you're using InfoPath to customize the form that you're using, then obviously you could make this field read-only and whatnot, but what's going to end up happening is that if this field is editable through the form and people type things in, it should get overridden when the workflow runs, so keep that in mind. Oops, I just hit backspace, sorry. Request for documentation. Oh, did I just do the wrong thing? Yes, I did. Hold on, bear with me here. I'm not going to go in and edit all this video. I'm just going to give you the uncut version. Okay, so like I said, you might want to read only that field or something. We'll just leave the rest of this as is. These are just fields that are in my system, but I'm going to go ahead and save it. The workflow should run. It hasn't run yet. See, the workflow status is a column that I can see here in my list view, so it's in progress. If I refresh, it should be getting close to complete or complete. There we go. So what you're getting is the date, dash, and then the unique ID for SharePoint's list items. Now, the one thing to note about using the ID in the SharePoint list is that you will never be able to use this number again. SharePoint will never assign another item that ID, number 2 or number 1. So if you were to delete this item and create another one, it's always going to be the next step. So it'll go to number 3 or 4 or 5. You'll never get this again. So that's one of the restraints or restrictions to using the SharePoint list ID column. If you have a need to reuse numbers because an item was deleted and you'd like to reassign that, then this is probably not the best method for that, but usually for unique IDs you want a unique ID that's never been used before, so this works quite well. Okay, so if you got any questions, let me know.